Welcome to the School Debate, What You Need to Know. My name is Megan Teixeira, and I'm coming to you from the SMAC studios to dive into some of the most highly contested questions involving the new elementary school building here in Stoughton. Today, with me, I have some wonderful guests joining me from the Stoughton Public Schools. Dr. Joe Baeta, Superintendent of Schools, Ms. Juliette Miller, Principal of Stoughton High School and Chair of the Stoughton Redistricting Committee, and Ms. Kathleen Monahan, Principal of the Wilkins Elementary School and co-author of the education plan that was written for the new elementary school building project. Welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining me today. So the first question goes to you, Dr. Baeta. So we're hearing a lot about the changes in Stoughton, turning into a city instead of a humble suburban town. Can you speak to the changes you're seeing in the district and why people are moving here?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having us. If you just take a look at Stoughton and our student population growth that's currently taking place, we're in year 4 of student enrollment increases and projected to be increasing over the next 10 years. What we're seeing is a demographic shift, both in our number of minority students. We are now a minority-majority district. 56.4% of our students are African American, Hispanic, Asian, multiracial, so on. When you look at our EL population, that's part of our shift. And then the third part that's part of the shift is almost a double increase in low-income poverty within the community. So when you add all these shifts, what the state said to us is that with increased enrollment, with the demographic shift, with the increase in EL, we are recognizing you as an urban school district. And so we were entered into that this year for the first time. It's based on 3 years of data before you're asked to come in. But we now fulfill under DESE the idea that we are I always say suburban district, suburban. And the reason why I use that is because we do have very suburban-like parts of town, and then we have more urban parts of town, but our school community is really a small city. Versus, for example, what I think folks sometimes push back in is our form of government is a typical traditional suburban town form of government. With a town meeting and a select board and the school committee and a finance committee and all the different elected and appointed officials versus a city which is much more a different form of government with a mayor usually and councilmen and so on and so forth.
Got it. Great. Thank you. Principal Miller, as the principal of Stoughton High School for the past 10 years, you've been through this process before. You have seen a school move from an old, decrepit space to something warm and welcoming and inviting. Can you tell us about your experience and the changes you're seeing, since the new high school's been built?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So the old high school was nearly 100 years old. So those spaces were very decrepit, to use your word. But more so, they weren't spaces that we had retrofitted so many times to fit what we had moved on in terms of instructional practices, content areas, new programs. So we had to retrofit those spaces that, in 1923, nobody was doing video productions, So we had these new spaces, we had these new programs that we really wanted to build the right spaces for. And so that whole process allowed us, through the educational plan, similar to the one that Ms. Monahan co-authored, to really plan for the things that we're doing now, but also for the future and the things we wanted to grow. So going through that experience and seeing from the beginning ideas from what the stakeholders shared in building that education plan to seeing it come to fruition was an amazing opportunity. And now we're able to see several different things, I would say. You see a change in culture and climate. Students can see the pride, they have pride in their surroundings and their buildings. You can experience that when we have visitors come into the building and talk about how beautiful the space is, and the kids are very proud to share that with them. And they also recognize that when they go out to other schools that are not quite in this condition that ours are. But then there are studies and there's research that shows that within about 5 years or so from the time of moving into a new building, you start to see other gains in the building as well in terms of achievement, attendance, and those things. And so you see we have a better culture and climate in terms of our student behavior, student management. But we also this year received, which is about that 5-year mark. We moved in 2019, and this year we got 3 different honors that we have not received before. We received a bronze medal from the College Board for AP. honor roll. And so what that was recognizing was the amount of students that we have accessing, taking the AP test, the attendance on that, the achievement on that, and particularly representing our underrepresented or typically marginalized populations. Then we also received a recognition from the Department of Education as a school of recognition due to our results in MCAS in terms of growth. We exceeded our targets in many of our demographics, but also again in our attendance. And then we received acknowledgement from the U.S. News and World. News and World, thank you, who rated us as one of the top 25% of the high schools in the nation. And so I think those are all pieces that come from being able to move into that new space.
Right, great. Thank you. Principal Monahan, as the Wilkins Elementary School principal, you worked on the education plan for this project with South School Principal Jake Dorr. Why was the pinwheel design one of the best, for this project for Stoughton's Elementary School's education plan? And what opportunities does it bring to the schools, all the schools in the town?
Sure. So when we drafted the education plan, before we even put pen to paper, we had several visioning sessions where we got information from multiple stakeholders, parents, community members, students, obviously staff. And one of the things that was really important that came out of that was being environmentally conscious. And so we wanted to maintain the integrity of the land that this building would actually be built on. And this particular design has the smallest footprint. And that was something that was really important to all of us when we were talking about what plan made the most sense. We were presented with several plans to choose from. Another thing that was extremely important when we were talking about what we wanted in a new school was to have those community areas, such as the gym or the cafeteria, to be able to be utilized by the community when school was not in session. And in order for that to really happen, we have to be able to lock that area down so that the rest of the school no one has access to it. And so in this plan, compared to some of the other plans that we were presented with, this was done the best. So it was a nice way to separate some of those common areas from the actual educational spaces. And I think another common theme that kept coming up in all of these different visioning sessions was this idea that this could potentially be a school with approximately 600 students enrolled, and yet we wanted to maintain that small community feel. And so when you look at the pinwheel design, you'll notice that we have kindergarten and first grade on the first floor, and then second and third grade on the second, and fourth and fifth up on the third floor. But what that allows for is it allows for the different developmental levels of the students to be together. And it also allows for some of those different specialized classrooms to be part of the grade level group. So we have the special education, English language learner rooms. Those are all built within each wing. So in doing that, we can bring some of those programs that are currently housed in other schools to this new building, which would alleviate some of that overcrowding that we're seeing in the other elementary schools.
Wow, great. That's wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Baeta, back to you. So we're hearing a lot about that we're applying for grants and other funding streams, and this is somehow, ruining our town and attracting high needs and low income families. Can you speak to the types of grants that we apply for? Give us some examples, and then how it's utilized across the district?
Yeah, so under the federal law, Title I and IDEA are funds that come to us based on your student population needs. So that's a given program that comes in. And for us, our IDEA, which is the special education one, is basically IDEA's federal law originally says that the feds are supposed to be paying for all of it. They pay only about 13% of it as a total budget that goes to the 50 states and territories. So at the end of the day, what we utilize those funds for are direct services to students, if you will. So one of the things that we've been trying to do is really move away to more of the transportation stuff and all of that, and not the people, because part of the people also means that 11% of every person's salary has to be taken out of that grant as part of the process. So it dwindles down the funds that are available to give direct services. Everything else is really, in the last few years, we've had 11. I actually just sent it to the Finance Committee after being requested last night on the 12th of March. They're predominantly this year have been for us one-time grants because of the shelters. For example, we received a $249,000 one-time grant, no personnel. That is where the Jones School, for example, this spring will get a fenced-in playground area, and the Dawes School will get fenced in. And we ordered translation software, and we ordered about 50 Chromebooks because of need. One-time purchases that really just support those holes that we don't have to put into the budget. The second part of the grants have been competitive grants that we can apply for. So, for example, a couple that we've applied for have been around the idea of direct support services to families via our registration office. So we got a one-time grant to be able to have a social worker for X number of hours a week between January and June. That's all. It's not in the budget for next year, but maybe it's something that gives us ideas for the future. So that was a grant for $25,000. So very small, the smaller grants. Now, to the second part of your question about attracting folks and so on and so forth, let's just speak to why families are attracted to come to Stoughton. A, it's safe. B, great schools. C, it's expensive to live in Stoughton, but if you live outside of Stoughton, you don't think Stoughton's expensive in comparison to our local communities. Yeah. And if you ask and sit down with those families, which I have, they will tell you safety. One that comes up is the train. I can go back and work in town. I can, park my car at a couple of local establishments that rent out their spaces, and get on the train and be back home and so on and so forth. It's a destination place right now. I mean, for those of us that are townies or are born in town or raised in town, I was raised in town. The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, Stoughton is a place where the diversity of Stoughton, I know it's a controversial word now, but it's always been a diverse community. I mean, it was a linguistic diverse community for decades, and I can speak to that. And today it's got more diversity in terms of racial background. And 3/4 of it, when you talk to people, is literally safety, location, cost, schools. That's what you hear every single time, over and over again. And the prices of homes are expensive. I mean, I can't say that I would ever buy my small little home for the price that it's on the market today or would be on the market today. Right. But again, if you're close to all of these other things and you're a safe community and your schools are good, why aren't you taking a chance on that community? And that's what they're doing. They're not doing, and listen, people don't like it when you say this, but darn it, we have good programs.
Yeah.
We just heard about success in AP. Why aren't we talking about that as much as we're talking about that other stuff? The fact of the matter is the outcome of students is very positive in Stoughton, is continuously improving. And I think that's the reason why families are looking at it.
Great, thank you. Speaking of outcome of students, back to you, Principal Monahan. So those opposed to the project have been talking about that the Stoughton schools aren't performing like they should be. As a principal in town, how would you respond to that? And can you explain some of the metrics that are used to measure these elementary schools on and how the elementary schools are doing?
Sure. This is something I'm extremely passionate about. And I think it's really important to note that not only the leadership team, but all of the staff is continually looking at different types of data and thinking of ways to improve the educational experience for all the students in Stoughton. So I think that needs to be said. And it's extremely impressive when you look at what is offered in some of the other districts that are neighboring us and look at what we have. I mean, our students here are getting an exceptional education. When you look at, though, some of the different data that you can find on the Department of Ed website, specifically the district analysis and review tool, I think that's something that people commonly look at. Yeah. What that allows us to do is it lets us look at how Stoughton is performing in relation to districts that are very similar to us. So what that means is you look at how large our enrollment size is, and then you look at the percentage of some of those different subgroups, the demographics that make up Stoughton. Important to note, though, is you have the testing results for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th averaged together, and then the high school is considered separately. So obviously, how a 3rd grader performs on a test they've never taken before is going to be very different than, say, a 5th or an 8th grade student. And that's something that you need to make sure that you're really aware of, and that you do drill down more specifically on not only the different grade levels, but the schools that they come from. Mrs. Miller mentioned all the success at the high school. And I think it's also important to note that 2 of the elementary schools in town were also recognized on the U.S. News and World Report this past year. The Wilkins ranked 164 out of about 1,000 elementary schools in the state, and the South ranked 321. Those are remarkable achievements. And I think it's even more remarkable when you consider the facilities in which we are teaching our students in. Children today learn differently than they did even 10 years ago, much less when these schools were built. The rigor and the expectations and the standards that are expected of these students to prepare them for college and career readiness, it's just not the same. And the facilities that we're working in are not equipped to allow for some of the different opportunities that these students deserve. So, as Ms. Miller had mentioned, when you have students working in an environment that is new and is bright, that the air is clean, the kids are excited to learn, they show up to school, their achievement improves. And so, you look at how well the elementary schools have performed, it is exciting to think about the opportunities that lay ahead when this new school gets approved.
Wonderful, wonderful. Principal Miller.
Yes.
You are also the chair of the redistricting committee that has been put together in the for the elementary schools here in Stoughton. Can you speak to the work the redistricting team will do if the vote passes and if it fails, especially if the modulars are added to the elementary school, which I think we can all agree would be absurd?
Yes, so we are working right now a little slowly because we don't know what the vote will be, so we don't want to redo all the work that we need to do. If the vote passes, which we could say when the vote passes, we will need to redistrict anyways because you'd be closing down 2 elementary schools, combining, and so that means that lines would have to be redrawn and students would have to be moved. So we will be looking at those as a redistricting committee to see what would be the most efficient and effective way to do that, keeping in mind that we know that that's a hard discussion. It's a hard topic for families to consider and think about, and we will be dealing with that delicacy and grace that is needed. But if the project does not pass, redistricting still needs to happen. The South School is in dire condition and shape. I don't know how much longer it would be able to remain open if it is not, if we do not approve the new school. And so that means that all of the children that go to the South School would need to be relocated to another location. The elementary schools are already very crowded, bulging at the seams. We have several elementary schools that their spaces are being, closed down, like the library was closed to make its classrooms. The library in the hallway, I believe I've been told too. So we are already sort of bursting at the seams now. So imagine having to relocate the South School students into those situations, which is where the modulars come in that you've mentioned. In order to be able to accommodate an influx of more students into all those elementary schools, you're talking about redistricting and adding modulars as an educational space for those students for that overflow, which is not an ideal situation under any circumstance for educating children. They would be a temporary sort of structure. And we are looking at what that would look like and how that would, the costs that would be associated with that. And so that's some of the work that we're doing in that committee.
Great. Dr. Baeta, to you, speaking of cost, if the vote fails and we do need to move to the modulars, we've been told that paying for the modulars would need to come from the town's budget. Can you tell us how that would impact the schools?
Yeah, so there's a philosophy out there that the building of a new school or even modulars or a smaller school or whatever the scenario is can be done within the budget. I've just recently reviewed 51 different projects through the MSBA. Only one of them was done that way, and it was a very affluent community that did it. When you look at borrowing in the state for the purposes of building buildings and you look at revenue since 2017, what you'll see is that revenue coming in is significantly less by over $2 billion than actual expenditure when it comes to these types of projects. So what does that mean? That means that, and we can use this year. This year we have a significant number of free cash that's coming in to the town. But let's really talk about what that is. $5 million of it is the high school project, the savings from the project. That's $5 million of it. So that's another reason, because we're usually $3 to $4 million in free cash. Well, we have 12.7. Great work by the town hall, by the way, in really looking at old articles and all that stuff to really figure that out. I think that they should be absolutely supported for that extra work that they did. But that's a one-time 12.7. What happens if next year that's only 2? Your cost for this project is over $4 million a year, principal and interest, for 30 years. You're going to be in that probably vicinity of 3 to 3.25, just under 3 to 3.25 for modulars. What happens when the free cash isn't there? And quote, we're not supposed to be using free cash for operations.
Right.
That's a direct quote, right? We had a plan to come off of free cash over a number of years. It's been decided in the last 24 months that it's just going to be don't use it. And so if that's the plan, if you're using free cash to pay operational for the purposes of a loan, that's using free cash for operational. It's not using free cash for capital, stabilization, and other projects that the community needs. So we're very lucky right now, but the question is, can we sustain $4 million for 30 years? And I would argue, no. If you have an economic depression, or let's just call it a recession, depression goes even further back. If you have an economic recession, which usually comes, a significant one usually hits us every 20 years, right, on the economic cycle. If you have one, you already don't have revenue, but you're going to have this whopping bill that you got to pay, which means you're going to have to gut things. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at towns and schools, and if we make up 65 to 70% of the total budget, we probably are going to have to be 60 to 70% of the cuts, right? And it is what it is. I mean, you have to make decisions. Public safety is the most important thing. I'm your superintendent. Public safety is the most important thing. There's no doubt about it. Without public safety, we don't have a community. Without education, we don't have a future.
Last question. Some of you are Stoughton residents, and besides working in the schools, can you tell me, why do you think taxpayers should vote yes in support of this project?
I can go. I mean, I live in Stoughton as well as work here. And I guess I have a question. Why wouldn't you vote yes? I mean, to put it pretty bluntly, our students deserve better. I mean, I work at the Wilkins. It's a lovely school. It's a solid building. And our students are certainly safe in the Wilkins and the South School without question. But they deserve more. They deserve better. And there are so many things that we want to do with our students in school that we're not able to do because we're limited by the facilities in which we work. And as someone who pays taxes and had kids go to school at the South School and the middle school and the high school, I don't know in what reality you wouldn't want to vote yes. The conditions are just simply not sustainable. We will not be able to maintain our performance if we don't have better facilities eventually. We're talking about bringing modulars at my school, they'd be literally put in the front yard of the building. I mean, that's not something that anyone in this community wants. So I think those are all factors that we have to consider. So, I mean, to me, but I keep going back to, why wouldn't you vote yes? And our kids simply, they deserve better. They deserve better.
So I can look at this from two different perspectives. The one that makes everybody happy, I'm the superintendent, so under policy, I can publicly support the project because literally I'm in charge, if you will, of the implementation of it. And so been working with a building committee and so on and so forth. So I can do that under the ethics law and say that I support the project and think that folks should vote yes. And I do so because I think the understanding of where we are is really simple. We're in year 25 of the 21st century, and our buildings go back, in this case, to the 1950s. Yes, decisions were made a few years ago where there was going to be the South School first, became the high school. That was a decision grounded on, let's see if we can get a new high school because it's a town-wide project and so on and so forth. Second part of this is, this project takes away the future building of new elementary schools for the taxpayers. At best, you're looking, or at worst, depending on at renovations and addition projects. And recently, I've done some shows at the Daw School and compared it to, and I hope to do some others. So as a superintendent, my job is to provide the best educational opportunity for kids. This building won't open until 28. So we're 28 years into. And then what we also do is we take another school offline. The Jones School will come offline. The Jones School is zero chance of any federal or state assistance under MSBA's project process because it's a pre-K and administrative. So the Wilkins would now become our preschool. Of course, we also have 90 students on the waiting list in our preschool, so we'd be able to take in probably very close to 100% of those. And the future of what's taking place in public education, which is really preschool for all students, right?
Right.
As a taxpayer and someone who's a product of the system and a child went through the elementary system and so on, I'm really proud to be able, as a taxpayer, to look at what we're trying to do in our town, and that is move our town forward. So what does that mean? We have a new library. We have a new high school. We have a new fire station. We have a potential, some type of renovation addition of a police station. We have this project. Now, some folks would say, well, that's a lot. Well, as a taxpayer, I blame folks who came before as elected officials and didn't take this on as a resident. And I do so, and I've been very forthcoming about that. And so we built 5 elementary schools in 17 years in this town with no MSBA, no government support, literally on the back of the taxpayers. And here we are again. So this plan actually fulfills that the last major project, if this project goes through, is the O'Donnell Middle School.
Right.
That would be the last major project on the town side for decades. Remember, these buildings are being built for at least 50 years of service. At least 50 years of service. So I'm 56, so I will not be around for the full 50. I may not even be around for the full 30 years of paying down this project. I hope I am at 30, at 86. I'm hoping I'm around, but probably won't be, but that's okay. But at the end of the day, it makes financial sense for me as a taxpayer, and educationally and financially it's sound as the superintendent.
That's great insight, and it truly highlights the impact this project will have on our students and the entire community. As we wrap up, I want to express my deepest gratitude to Superintendent Baeta and our principals, not just for sharing their time and expertise today, but for their unwavering dedication to our children and to our schools. Your leadership and your passion are shaping our future, and we just really appreciate everything you guys do for us.
Thank you.
This new elementary school is an exciting step forward, and we encourage everyone to stay involved and informed and get the facts. For more information, please visit voteyesstoughton.com, and remember to pay less and vote yes on April 8th. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on The School Debate, What You Need to Know.